Hey guys, welcome back here to today's edition of The Fishing Teacher, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to check out today's video. And guys, today we got a good jig video. We're going to be talking about water clarity, water temperature, and when you want to fish a jig, as far as when it works better than other similar lures. When you're talking about a jig, you're talking about a bottom bouncing lure. So you've got other type of options too in the lure categories, like, Texas rig worms, Texas rig creature baits, drop shots, shaky heads, Ned rigs, all that type of stuff. But there are certain set of conditions in terms of water clarity and water temperature that really signals that you want to throw a jig. So we're going to get into that in today's episode here. And also, guys, for get started, I will include we'll be talking about my Blaukat Throwback, my Power Finesse Throwback jig, and my Blaukat Throwback jig, living rubber skirts, guys, hand tied. I'll put the link in the description and my Tackle Warehouse link if you guys would like to pick up some of my throwback jigs. Living rubber is the superior skirt, and there's not many companies that make it because they are so labor intensive, but we do make it working with Cumberland Pro Lures like I have been, so appreciate that. Okay, so when do you want to fish a jig as far as water clarity and water temperature over anything else? Now, before we get into this, I just want to say that there is not a situation in bass fishing where a jig will not work to some degree. I don't care if the water temperature is 40 degrees and muddy. I don't care if it's 40 degrees and clear. I don't care if it's 80 degrees and muddy or clear and everything in between. Bass will bite jigs at any time. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to maximize the lure category to get the most bites versus the conditions. So I want to go over today when my favorite time to fish a jig is as far as water temperature and water clarity. Now, there's two different type of jig setups. You've got the finesse jig, like my Blaukat Power Finesse jig, which is a ball head jig. It's a lot more smaller and compact. It's about half the size of a full-size jig. And then you've got my regular Blaukat Throwback jig, which is about twice the size. A larger trailer. It's got more of a flipping head on it, bulkier skirt, just an all-around, bulkier bait with that. So there's two different windows as far as when these two jig categories work, and you definitely need to have both of them. If you're fishing a finesse jig, most of the time a finesse jig is going to be better in some type of clear water conditions. And I don't mean clear water, but for a finesse jig, for me to work really good, I like to have water visibility of at least around 2 feet. 2 foot or greater is really good for a finesse jig because it is a smaller bait and you get more bites in that clear water with that. Now, the water temperatures can be a lot of different things, but personally, I have found that a finesse jig works the best if the water temperatures are like 45 to 55 degrees, in that range, or 45 to 60 degrees, sort of like in that pre-spawn period or the same time in the fall time of the year works really good. So that is one of my favorite times to fish a finesse jig, probably number one. And the other time it works good is around like docks and shallow wood cover in the middle of the summer when the fish are really lethargic and they're not very aggressive and they're just not feeding real good. So it's sort of like a paradox. It's either real cold water or real hot water. Real cold water in a little bit deeper situation like rock, bluff banks, riprap type banks, rocky banks, or shallow water, dirty cover in the hot water, like around docks and lay down trees and lily pads and stuff like that. Okay, now the big size jig here, the full size jig, you're going to find that it works a little bit better in warmer weather conditions. So while the finesse jig works good in water temperatures like under 57, 50, 55, 40 degree water, the time that I go to a bigger full-size jig is when that water temperature starts to get in the mid to upper 50s, and all the way through it gets up even warmer and warmer. I like to have water temperature for a full-size jig of around 55 degrees, for the maximum benefit with that. And it'll work in anywhere between 55 degree water to 90 degree water, and it also works in a little bit more off-colored water. While the finesse jig is good in water visibilities of over 2 foot, the full-size jig is going to be better in your water visibilities of under 2 feet. Again, simply because the bulk and the size of the lure. That's sort of the guideline for me. I mean, the ideal water visibility for me for a full-size jig is about 12 to 15 inches of visibility. Makes a big difference in the number of bites that you get. And that's the whole thing when you're determining this. It's like when you have a jig, which is a bulky, large profile lure like this, it's a big commitment to a bass to eat a jig. It's a lot of mass there. So, it just seems like in that little bit off colored water, the more conducive to catching them on the bigger jig and more diminutive in the clear water. Another thing about jigs, that's sort of the reality of the situation, is you're simply most of the time not going to get as many bites on them as you do like some type of a Texas rig bait. Texas rig worms, Texas rig creature bait or craws or something like that are generally going to get more bites because they don't have that bulky profile. The bulk profile of any lure, I don't care if it's a swim bait or a crankbait or a glide bait or anything like that, has a lot to do with how many fish will actually bite the thing and commit to it. And it's true, this is one truth in fishing: the bulkier, the larger bait that you go to, the less bites that you're going to get, but you're going to get more quality fish. You're going to get bigger fish. So, difference between a full-size jig and a finesse jig: most of the time, the fish that you're going to catch on a finesse jig are going to weigh at least a half a pound bigger than on a full-size jig. They're going to weigh, half a pound bigger than on a finesse jig there. That's just sort of how that unfolds with that. So anyway, guys, that's just a few basic tips with jig fishing as far as water clarity and water temperature. I love fishing them, man. There's something about a jig bite that you can't duplicate. And again, guys, if you want to try some of these, I'll put them in my Tackle Warehouse link in the description. So really appreciate it, and we'll check in later.